my brain, my soul, my non-judgmentalness, my power, my acceptance of myself, my self-love is a support system. And that at the end of the day, family, friends, significant others, a book, an Instagram post, a theology, a myth, a crystal, a podcast, like any of those things, they do not decide whether or not I can carry on. I am the one that decides because that's my support system at the end of the day.
Hello and welcome to the podcast, to another episode of Queerly Overthinking. I'm your host, Adam Harper. I am honored to have my amazing bestie, Cassie, joining me today. In today's episode, we're diving into the concept of a self-sustaining support system and why it's crucial for our well-being. We'll also discuss the importance of building and prioritizing our own values, all while trying to avoid the pitfalls of an overly individualistic narrative. Y'all, this episode, I can't tell you how timely this came together. Y'all ready? Let's get into it. Well, welcome, Cassie, to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh my gosh, Adam, I'm thrilled. It is an honor to be here on the podcast with you. Thank you for the trust and can't wait to just knowledge share on this topic with you.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for making the time and sharing the space with me. Not to get too sidetracked off the bat already, because I know I'm already going to want to talk about a million different things, but I just remember when I was first conceptualizing the podcast and you had asked me, like, what are you going to be talking about? And I shared with you, the initial values of the podcast. And I really appreciated the level of interest that you off the bat expressed of oh, wow. It felt very receptive to the concepts and the goals and the mission value and everything like that. So I'm just so honored that now you're here.
I know, I didn't even know at that time I would get to be here, but I love learning and I love that you are someone who loves learning, and to get to learn alongside you has just been an invaluable experience.
Thank you, girl. Oh my gosh. I freaking adore you. And I would love for you to share a little bit about who you are, give our listeners a little bit of a taste, a little preview of who Cassie is before we get started.
To sum up me, I am an eclectic individual who is always in the I'm figuring it out crew. I think my life has gone in many seasons and many episodes of this is what is she doing now? Well, what is she doing next? What is she going to do after that? Of just evolving and not being afraid to evolve and go through change over and over again. So when I think of who I am someone who is quite resilient and constantly wanting to learn, a lust for knowledge, honestly. And what does that mean for the space? How do I share that with others? How do I keep it in some sort of index that I can go back to and reference and pull it back out at the right time whenever it's needed, whether that be through what I get to do from work with customer experience or analytics and research and using that with clients and internal teams, or if it's with dance, which is my favorite hobby, or if it's with my friend groups. Just how do you care and love other humans better? I find that it's one of my most valuable traits that I love about myself.
Oh my gosh, I love everything about that. And I wholeheartedly just see that in you. And I love that that's just a little bite size of who you are. So I'm so excited for people to get to know you even more in this episode. And I think we met, or at least we established as we were planning this episode, that we first connected back in June of 2022 through our mutual friend and fellow producer of the podcast, Cass.
We love, oh man, life has forever changed because of Cass. So fantastic to know her.
Very true. Yeah. From there, we just kind of clicked we've hung out ever since then, and we've even gone on a cruise together, forever travel besties. Here we are, but to kind of wrap up the intro, I want to kind of share what is like one mutual, like mutually between us, like what's one thing that we love about each other. And if it's okay, can I go ahead and share first?
Yes, you go first. You go first.
Okay.
I'll be patient.
Well, I just absolutely love how open you are to the concept of energy and mindfulness, and that there are so many things in this world that connect us in unique ways, like meditation, body movement, insightful things like personality trait analysis or zodiac, even, and you're just so open to exploring who you are through different mediums in the world, and to use those to help kind of like express that. And I love it. And I'm going to sneak in a second one here. I truly, truly appreciate one of your love languages being gift giving, because no matter the size or the price, what remains consistent is that you've really put so much thought and intention behind each of the gifts. And I just really feel that anytime that I've received a gift from you. So I love you, girl.
Oh my gosh, Adam, thank you. I love that that comes across. So I definitely enjoy picking out gifts for other people and try to make sure that that does match who they are and who I see in them. And so I can't believe you called that one out. That's amazing. For you, okay, I had to net it down a lot because you said one, but we'll see. But what I truly love about you that I have gotten to experience every single time I think we've had an interaction, and this is just something so consistent through your life and your personhood, is that you are not afraid to speak up about what you need in a given situation based on the context of what's happening or what's going on around us or whatever we're planning for. You are so kind and respectful of other people, but you do not put yourself aside when you're also kind and respectful of other people. And you will say out loud what it is that you need in that moment, what it is that you need and in that setting. And you say it to those around you and your friends. And is such an example of taking up space and being true to yourself and being that support system for yourself that we're going to get to talk about today. And every time I think about different interactions that we've had, from being at a casual restaurant, somebody's house, on a travel trip, you do this. And I want to be more like that. I love it. I love it. I love that about you. Thank you for being an example.
Thank you. That really means so much. And actually, like, that is extremely validating, because it has taken such a long time for me to like unpack. I kind of talked about this in a previous episode too, about just like people pleasing and making space for others at the detriment of myself. And it's taken so much effort, and it still takes effort. It's a consistent, conscious choice to have to like do that, to where it's like, hey, I'm willing to go with the flow and, see what other people want to do, but also like, I just need some basic, like this one thing and then I'm good kind of a thing, or, like a couple things or whatever. So like, I really, really appreciate that, like, you see that in me, because sometimes I don't always see it in myself. So like, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And apparently we've only known each other for 2 years. I don't know if I believe it. It feels like forever in a good way. But I can tell you, yeah, the work you've been doing on it for the 2 years that I've known you, that's what I've gotten to see. And I totally understand that that's a skill set that comes from a place of you realizing it, figuring it out of what you need for yourself, and then putting it into action. So it's been there for the 2 years that I've gotten to know you.
Well, that was seriously such an amazing intro, and I don't even know how I'm gonna like follow that, but here we go. As mentioned in the intro earlier, we are going to be discussing the overall topic of self-sustaining support systems. And while there's a lot to unpack here, we've put a lot of great care into what we want to address, and I hope that it'll come across well to our listeners. And I'm just very ready to dive into this first segment. And like in most episodes, we kind of have a list of concepts or questions that we like to walk through and to ask each other. And so to start with the first segment, the overall theme of this segment is, what is the concept of a self-sustaining support system and why is it important? So thinking about that as the first kind of general theme. The first question is, what is an essence of being your own self-sustaining support system? And I'm going to toss that over to you, Cassie, and kind of share your initial thoughts on that.
I love it. Okay. So when I sum it up in maybe just a sentence around this, the essence to me for a self-sustaining support system is that I am okay and I will be okay even if I don't have someone else around me telling me that I am okay. That is the summary. The summary is just, if nothing else is here, nothing else is here, then I am all right on my own. And I can say that and believe that for myself, period.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I feel like that's a great way to kind of overall encapsulate everything that a support system would be, specifically for yourself. I just feel like that makes so much sense to me, at least, because it kind of coincides similarly with a point that I had written down about this of, the first thought that came to mind was the symbiosis relationship of your inner parent and inner child, and like knowing when you need to step up to kind of like be the parent or like the adult in a situation, but then also letting yourself let loose and express your inner child in a way.
Yeah, that's really great because you're protected the whole time because that parent self is there, and you're free the whole time because the child self is there, all in the same one. I love how you said it. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I really like how both of those ideas, they'll kind of blend together because in a way, it can kind of feel like a one person show, so to speak. And how do you show up for yourself in that regard? How do you find time to recharge, reset? What are ways that you express yourself? What are ways that you go about like continuing to find interest in life and culture and like the blend of everything with that? So I like how those kind of like blend together in those two different ideas. But I'm curious though, those two kind of things kind of have like a sense of balance that has to be worked in a way, and that can also be really hard and challenging to find that specific balance. And for me, I know that it can be really hard when you're building a support system or when you're making changes to your own support system. Folks, we're going to be saying support system probably like every other sentence. So
I wish we had a cool acronym, but we don't. So that's it. Maybe by the end of the episode.
right, right. Oh, goodness. But there's a bit of a learning curve, I think, that you have to work through when you have to shore up parts of your life when you are doing it on your own and having to change out like different supports or struts or beams that are holding up your support system, even though it might be easier if there was someone there to do it with, regardless of like what relationship you might have with that person. But I also just feel like it takes a very empathetic person to realize what kind of individual they show up as and how they show their support. And so it takes one to kind of understand how they can do it, but then also be able to observe how is somebody else showing their support, because it's kind of like love languages in a way, but also just what reciprocal way do you feel like your relationships are. And anyway, that's kind of a few ideas in one. I'm curious to know if you have any thoughts on that same point.
Yes, we still build external support systems around us, right? Like humans need other humans, and we're going to talk about eventually, we'll talk about what are some best ways to build into that in a bit. But I think this exercise in finding out that our own self can be a support system in general, to be able to say, like, my brain, my soul, my non-judgmentalness, my power, my acceptance of myself, my self-love is a support system. And that at the end of the day, family, friends, significant others, a book, an Instagram post, a theology, a myth, a crystal, a podcast, like any of those things, they do not decide whether or not I can carry on. I am the one that decides, because that's my support system at the end of the day, about myself that's deciding it.
Snaps, girl. Snaps. I'm here for it.
I think it's on the same topic as you're talking about. That's that balance of saying, like, this is not to be only about yourself. There are these other things that are always here, they're always around. But as we talk about later, they aren't the center. You are the center of your world. And if you're finding that's not the case, maybe this episode is for you, because we're going to talk about why it's important and then how to start to achieve that.
One thing that I did want to slip in here too, there's a lot of things that go into building one's own system of support. And people don't oftentimes talk about the symptoms that may be included in doing that. So let's read the fine print of this label over here.
Yes, fine print. Symptoms may include.
I mean, for me, I've felt doubt and anxiety, hyperfixation or overthinking as I've touched on that before in other episodes and other conversations that we've had too. Just feeling your feelings, I feel like is so important. You can't know the contrast between what it feels like to be connected with people without knowing what it feels like to be by yourself. But a symptom of oftentimes being by yourself can be feeling lonely, even though like those two things aren't, the same thing per se. It's difficult, especially when you have to make certain decisions to protect yourself and to protect your values in that way. But before I get into that segment, are there any other, symptoms may include symptoms that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, well, it's very similar because if you come from cultures like yours and mine, it can be very difficult as you're going against the grain. And for me, isolation and anxiety have been the two biggest symptoms of feeling that loneliness, feeling like I'm the only one that's doing this. I'm the only one that's making different choices. Everybody else has this other framework. And it's never true to say everyone and I'm the only. Like, those are not true things. That you do have to find your other group of people, that external side of who else is going down a different path, who else is in that figuring it out group, and buddying up friendship. That is very, very important, because as we get into this, and this might be off topic yet, I'm not sure, it might be for a later topic, so you let me know. But I think what happens when we start to talk about our traditional cultures versus this culture, theologies will tell us if we're good or bad, right? Your family accepts you or they don't accept you. You're valuable if you have a significant other that has selected you, etc. And what we're saying in this self-support system is that those three very big things: value, your, like, what's moral, what is love, I guess it's a fourth thing, and acceptance, that we are saying those can be decided by yourself within your support system, saying, yes, those things are true, instead of it hinging on these external factors that people may or may not have. And we'll get into that, I think, here in a little bit, and like, why is this crucial? But just as a kick to start it, coming from a place that's not the same as yours, but similar to yours, as we've talked about childhoods and things, I'm in my late 30s now, discovering that I can say these things and believe these things about my own life without someone else's stamp of approval or higher authorities like, yep, you got it. Yes, we're okay with that, has been one of the best discoveries of my life, and has been that anxiety reducing place and belonging to yourself, even though sometimes it can feel isolating, at the end of the day allows you to feel the most.
I resonate with that so, so much because you're hitting the nail right on the head. You know what I mean? It's just like there are values that we oftentimes have to question or reevaluate to reprioritize. And I feel like you kicked off this next part of this like amazingly, of just like, how do we prioritize our own perspectives, our own values, especially when so much of whatever we may have grown up in, whatever culture we may have grown up in, whatever belief we may have grown up in, a lot of those are kind of handed down to us, and we're not really given an opportunity to reevaluate that until much later in life, if we're
Yeah.
given, like, if we have the tools to be able to do that. Because
Yes.
a lot of people don't discover like those mindfulness tools to be able to unpack something and like look at it and be like, is this serving me in this moment? Is this something that I still hold in high regard? And at some point I had to start asking myself too, like, what do I stand for? What do I believe in? And I don't have to have an answer for necessarily everything per se, but I think it's important to have some sense of a moral compass in a way, and that is incredibly difficult to redefine that moral compass sometimes. And like especially if it's something that you've always ever known, because again, like you have like your compass to base off other decisions, and so if you're like, well, how do I base off the changes I'm making to this compass if I have nothing else to really go off of?
Yes. Yeah, I want to talk about values here in a little bit, and but I want to just like I got to like swoop back to what you said about even having the time and when you could possibly have the time, because we have to talk about hierarchy of needs, and we have to talk about systems and structures that raise us and that for better or worse we were born into or fell into or something else. Because if we don't have basic needs met, we'll never get to the place of being able to say, let me rethink what I believe about this world. If we're constantly like, I just have to get food on the table, or I have to get the kids to daycare, or, like if I don't work 3 jobs, I'm going to lose my apartment, or like you have to have basic things available for you. So then you can take those off the table, take those off of your brain, if you will, and thinking space to then be able to say, like, okay, what do I believe about this thing? Why am I feeling that right now? And we don't have I mean, you and I are in the US, right? Like, there's not a support system externally for a lot of people to fall back on. So then we could actually have the space to breathe and then rethink things and define ourselves. So I just want to like add that in as a totally aware of situation, maybe, or maybe there's probably a better word for it than that, but it is an influence to how we go about the world. And to be able to be in a place now where I could take the time to think about those things, like out of a traumatic situation, like have been working on who I am and able to go to therapy, able to have these other needs met. So now I can like take the space and think about what I want to believe about the world and what my values are. That's a huge blessing. That's a privilege. That is a significant marker that I have that I need to be aware of. And whether or not we see other people doing that, we don't know the situations that they're in and what they're coming from to whether they could do it. So that's just tagging back to what you said earlier.
That reminds me of an episode I did with my friend Lauren where you talked about, I can't remember what the pyramid is called though. She was able to do a quick Google,
The
but
hierarchy of needs, like probably, yeah.
yeah, I feel like there's like a name attached to it too outside of that, but I don't remember what it is. But yes, I completely agree with you on that as well. And it's really difficult too when you have different pillars shaking or like kind of being moved around or a little rattled a bit,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's like your home life, your work life, relationships, and things like that. Like if any more than one pillar is being kind of shifted around, that's always like tricky to navigate that pyramid then on top of that of like needs of everything that you mentioned with that. So I really appreciate you circling back with that. And to touch back on the value side of things, when you are shifting those ideologies or beliefs and systems. And so when you're thinking about all of those and the support beams that you have in your life, and if things are shifting around like that, that's really difficult when you are making those changes, because sometimes those supports are in the form of people. And when you're changing your values, oftentimes that means that your support system of people that also supported those values around you also changes. And that can be really difficult to see change.
I'm seeing the Inside Out visual where I don't know that everybody's seen that movie, but as she's changing things in her life or things are shifting, like each of those centerpieces, beams, if you will, kind of go offline and things become much more unsteady and you don't have a constant anchor to hold on to, which is very scary. Like it feels chaotic to change from this is the whole system that I've known and these are the beliefs that I've had, and now I'm like shifting and pushing against those. Internally, we're going to push back on that because that's taking extra work, and our brains want answers. Most people's brains, I think, want answers where some people are very, very comfortable being in the, well, we don't know and we'll experiment and find out. But a lot of times, like to just be, we're going to go back to our habits and those same sort of like ruts that our brains like to be in because it saves us time. And neurologically, like it saves us time to not have to be thinking about what do I think about that. And back again, it's Maslow's probably hierarchy of needs that Lauren was also mentioning, but that's the
Oh
same
yeah,
thing that
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
talking about. Yeah, it's the pyramid. Same thing that I'm talking about. So I think when those shatter or those move, if it was a friend that was a strong pillar in your life and they change because your values have changed, yes, like there for a while, back to anxiety, isolation, feeling lonely, feeling like maybe I'm making the wrong decision. You said doubt. I think that was the word that you used. That doubt of like, am I doing the right thing for myself? Who answers that? If you do not have your own self-sufficient, like your support system saying, my belief matters just as much as anybody else's. The way I think about myself matters just as much as anybody else's opinion here. If you don't have that to answer it, you're going to stay in like chaotic world of everything is shattering around me and I have to maybe fix this friendship and I have to get this thing back. I'm too afraid to let it go because we're not anchored in the center point of ourselves. We're letting someone else be the center point for us. And I think when we talk about centers a lot in dance, and a lot of athletes, I would say probably a lot of sports and other things, like where's the center of your body? Where's the center of yourself? Identifying that I am the center point. I am the center for me. I am the anchor for that. I have me. I've got this. We can figure it out. As an I, myself. We can figure it out. We can do this. That's what creating this system allows us to do, is to keep ourselves at the center of our world, because that is what it is. Nobody else has those same thoughts or feelings as you do. You're the authority on that for yourself. We're just taught really often that that's not the case. Somebody else or something else is, or is better, and they would make a better decision, or they would tell you better what to do. And, we're not talking about people that are experts in a field of study, right? Like you want to go to experts to get an opinion on maybe what you should do. But at the end of the day, who owns that opinion and making that decision? That's still yourself. And so I think we probably should talk about like personal responsibility, why it's critical to have this system is it's personal responsibility for you saying, whatever may have happened or whatever this situation is, here's how I'm showing up. Here's how I'm showing up for myself. That's my responsibility. I can't change what somebody else did. I am not responsible for other people's actions. I am responsible for my own. Until we say, yes, I am responsible for my own and I am the center of me and I am the one that says this is okay or this is not okay for me, we're always going to be off on that. We can always blame something else, or we can harm other people, quite frankly. And there's a lot of collateral damage done when we're not taking action for, maybe I sought an expert on something. I did or didn't do what they told me, but that's my decision. That's my personal responsibility to move from there. I'm going to TED talk that one. Let me stop. And we can talk, a little bit more about why it's crucial. I want to hear from you on why you feel like it's crucial to build a self-sustaining support system.
Well, the first thought that comes to mind as you're sharing all of this is the personal growth that I'm seeing. And I know that we've talked about this too already a little bit before too, but what I found interesting for myself was like the benefits oftentimes outweighed the cost of having to go through
Yep.
this in a way,
Wow.
because
Yep.
you can really see the change in yourself. It takes a lot of effort for sure. Like this is like hard work to start to trust yourself, start to trust your
Mm-hmm.
intuition when there are so many things that like would not say otherwise. It really does start to build that self-confidence in yourself and to help you stop second guessing yourself in a way. So that's the first thought that came to mind when you asked that. But kind of in tandem too, it's really interesting to see how coming from different communities and different beliefs or positions on different, let's say, world opinions, political opinions, societal opinions, and things like that. It's fascinating to see how that has also brought other people back into my life who thought I lost or like left because different values, different, different priorities. And so to
Yeah.
have some people come back into my life in some sense of saying, hey, like, I see you, I hear you, or I even agree with you too on this point now where we may not have before. It's validating in a way of like, I can make my own decisions, they can make their own decisions, and like also giving everyone grace in that sense too, to like let folks be on their journey, but also be like a support during that journey in a way. So
Yeah, I love it. And the letting people figure it out for themselves. Yeah, because you're figuring it out for yourself and you have given yourself grace in figuring it out. And we're able to extend that more. Like the concept of empathy around this is crucial because it is hard work. This is not just happen. You have to actively be deciding, I'm going to set values for my life. I'm going to work through if those are good for me or not. And I'm going to stick to them, even if they're different than what people around me are doing. I think, wrapping up around the criticalness of having this sort of myself as the center and I can support myself no matter what happens is because change is inevitable. Death and change are the constants of our world. Those are the constants of our life. And that's it. So to be comfortable with both of those concepts that, okay, well, I'll die one day. And also change is always going to be here, allows us to be freer in the moment because friendships shift, people move. It's everything we've been talking about around your job could let you go without a warning. And maybe you want to build a new business or start a new podcast or become a parent. Maybe you get divorced. But those things that are traditional, which we'll start to talk about in a second, can always change. And what you were saying about friends coming back into your life, that is also part of the change. Your beliefs and values evolve over time as you learn more about the world. So you have to be able to have a container for those things within yourself that builds up who you are. What is your non-judgmental look? What does your empathy tank look like out towards the world that says, I am giving myself space to figure out what this concept means to me. I've done that exercise. I see someone else doing it. I can give them space to figure that out because I know how hard that is. Better way of human interaction. And whenever maybe you deconstruct from some very strict moral compass guidelines, then start to figure out what is my moral compass guidelines for myself outside of those. These are places that we want to come back to. What sort of human do I want to be in the world? How do I want other people to interact with me? What do I want them to expect from me consistently? That's what starts to build your new pillar, beam, who you are, compass, whatever concept you want to put it in, whatever framework works for you. This is not prescriptive. This is our take and experience on how we function on this planet.
kind of circling back to what you had said before about traditional support systems, can we expand on that a little bit? Like, how does this differ, the idea of a self-sustaining support system differ from traditional support systems or perhaps culturally established relationships and support systems?
This is something that sticks out to me just like in vibrant highlighter neon colors. Our traditional support models are usually based on frameworks of religion or family, work units, and those are things that we are told give us value and hold us together. So the traditional models look to others to let you know how you are and to let you know what you need. So I think those, we're not throwing them out. We're never throwing everything out, right? We are reevaluating, is that maybe what's best? And how much, what percentage of that do I allow to be my support model versus something else? Because a basic fact is that I am the one who's inside of myself, inside my thoughts, inside my feelings. I'm the one that's connected to me. I'm in my body. It's my mind. It's my spirit. It's my soul. It's what makes me me. No one else is inside of that. That's only me. And we are connected through, energy and frequency and spirits and like all of the different ways of being in the world. We're connected to each other. Even our DNA is so very closely connected to each other. So we're not throwing out these other things that help us function in the world. But maybe we're saying that shouldn't be the 100% support model that gives us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Maybe we should actually shift the balance of that and have so much more weight on being self-sufficient. I'm the one who says this, and that's 80% of the time or 90% of the time. And then there's a 10% from these other systems that I allow to give me advice or input, a little bit of influence, but those are not what I function off of in the world.
Girl, literally everything you're saying, I'm just like, double tap, 100%. Put the credit card down. Like, I'm buying it.
Put the credit card down. I'm swiping.
Well, I just love what you said too. I want to circle back to the family perspective. You know, I think in general, our society puts a big emphasis on family units, which is understandable as far as like, that's how we have all grown up to understand where your first kind of initial support system probably stems from, outside of like not thinking about anything belief wise or society or political wise or anything like that. But like, you know, you are related like to these people by blood, you grew up with them, you should have a relationship with them, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just like, hold up. Like, it's so hard though to like choose yourself over family relationships, especially if they're turbulent. And, you know, for me, I know that there's just such a longing sometimes to have increased closeness, but it's taken me also a very long time to realize that there is something, if there's something about having a closer relationship that is going to cause me more emotional distress than the longing that I had just mentioned, you know, weighing those two things out, I would rather take the lesser amount of emotional distress if I could, but that's not easy to do. And that's, again, going against the grain, like you were saying. And, you know, it bubbles up from time to time, and it's something that I have to consistently work through. But yeah, it's hard to go against that grain.
So difficult. And you're someone who knows this really well. And so being able to share on it and show others that there is a different path and how to maybe think about it. Like you are giving a how to think about it. Think about what is the risk, what is the reward? Thinking about what would you get out of this? What would you have to give to get that? Is that worth it? When we talk about weighting those decisions or giving percent to those decisions, it can be using math. It can be those visual frameworks that help you decide what is going to be the best thing. And so I love that you're sharing on that topic in the way that you think about it. And you said it earlier, again, both hands up, yes, to what am I going to get out of this versus what do I have to give? And is it worth it for myself? If it is, okay, get in there. If it's not, let's really think about it. Let's make it a deliberate decision, not an automatic habit, because the world said your traditional support model is your family.
Girl, I am living for that. And I want to riff off of that same point of,
Get it?
you know, thinking about thinking about this from a counterculture perspective and the importance of like finding your own path. You know, as you mentioned, we've talked about like isolation and also just putting your like finding that balance, so to speak. And, you know, finding balance is tricky, even for a Libra like myself, you know, but you have to be really careful to not, like, for example, become such a lone wolf, become a hermit, to close yourself off entirely, because that is possible. You can choose to do that. And I think it's important to define the steps that you take in your journey for yourself, even if you don't know exactly where your journey is taking you off the bat, but to also share that journey with others who champion you, and to just write your story one page at a time. As Natasha Bedingfield says, today is
Yes.
where your book begins, honey.
She was right. She was right.
Well, well, well. What do we have here? A two-part episode? Who could have guessed? As much fun as I was having with Cassie, midway through, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be two parts. But honestly, though, I think I'm gonna go back and listen to this episode again, even after editing it and everything, just because it's so good. There's so much in this episode. That said, I also hope you enjoyed listening. Part 2 will air in 2 weeks. And if you haven't already, hit that follow button and the notification bell so you get notified when it drops. But until then, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see y'all soon. Queerly Overthinking is hosted, edited, and executive produced by Adam Harper, with additional producing by Cass Cooper. You can follow Queerly Overthinking on Instagram or TikTok at Queerly Overthinking, and you can find more at www.queerlyoverthinking.com.